Navigating uncharted waters in a ship at sea is one of the oldest challenges in exploration and seamanship. Before modern navigation tools, sailors relied on experience, celestial navigation, and terrifyingly, trial and error to make their way through unknown regions. As you can imagine, more than one ship has run aground in foreign waters. Reading the headlines on the current tariff wars, it can feel a lot like we're sailing unfamiliar seas. There have been tariffs throughout history, but each one was shaped uniquely by the times, and some were more successful than others. In the matter of gold and silver, there are unpredictable depths to the risks that tariffs pose, but one thing is certain. Tariffs could have a more obvious and immediate impact to silver than gold. If you're serious about precious metals and want to stay ahead of the curve, hit that subscribe button. Your support makes a meaningful difference in our ability to make new videos each week. Thank you. Tariffs have dominated headlines lately, but if you need the cliff notes, here's the short version. The current administration is using tariffs as a strategic tool to rebalance trade between the US and other nations. However, there's a distinction between imposing tariffs and merely threatening them, something we've already seen play out in negotiations. In several instances, the administration has demonstrated a willingness to pull back when concessions are made. In the first round of tariffs, Mexico and Canada were hit with broad levies with a hefty 25% tariff applied across all goods. Meanwhile, Chinese imports faced a 10% tax. The response was immediate. Within hours, both Canada and Mexico entered negotiations, leading to an announcement on February 3rd that their tariffs would be delayed for 30 days. This was the first near miss for the precious metals industry, and it was particularly significant for silver investors. But the second round of tariffs, announced on the weekend of February 8th, took a more targeted approach. The focus this time was on steel and aluminum imports, with reciprocal tariffs expected as early as Tuesday or Wednesday. By Thursday, the US once again delayed the rollout of additional tariffs, allowing further time for negotiations. But the clock is ticking, and by the time the alarm sounds, it could be too late. Two major concerns are taking shape in the gold and silver markets, each with distinct risks. But in the case of these two metals, silver bears greater exposure. There are two countries in particular where tariff risks could cause significant volatility in the precious metals markets: Mexico and the UK. For gold, the UK is particularly important because of its role in global price discovery through the LBMA and its connection to the COMEX futures market in the US. These two exchanges are among the largest influences on gold's spot price, with much of the price discovery happening through gold futures contracts, commonly referred to as paper gold by investors. These contracts trade at a high leverage ratio, often far exceeding the amount of physical gold available in COMEX vaults. While this system works under normal conditions, since most traders prefer cash settlement, when markets are stressed, investors can use the exchange for physical mechanism, or EFP, to take ownership of gold they bought the rights to in a futures contract. Right now, concerns about potential reciprocal tariffs have driven uncertainty in the gold market, affecting liquidity between COMEX and LBMA. We've already seen a significant premium emerge in the EFP market, indicating stress in the system. For now, the uncertainty is a major cause of pressure on EFP contracts. In the UK, tariffs are sometimes positioned as a VAT, and this is the case for gold and silver. A tariff is a tax levied on imports, while VAT is a consumption tax. And although the UK likes to call it a consumption tax, VAT functions as a tariff in this context, increasing the possibility of retaliatory measures. However, there is a catch, and this is why gold and silver have different risk levels in the current geopolitical climate. Investment-grade gold bullion is exempt from VAT in the UK, which should provide some protection if new tariffs are introduced. But traders aren't taking that for granted. the scope of a reciprocal tariff isn't clear, whether it will be broad, narrow, or even affect gold at all, leaving market participants scrambling to secure physical gold just in case. Now, silver, on the other hand, doesn't have the same protection. Unlike gold, silver carries a 20% VAT in the UK, meaning that if reciprocal tariffs target VAT-inclusive products, silver could be directly impacted. And silver is also traded on both COMEX and LBMA, meaning it faces the same liquidity constraints and EFP pressures as gold. On top of that, most of the silver grain used in the US comes from Mexico, making it highly vulnerable to any new tariffs imposed on Mexican exports. Most people think of silver in terms of coins, bars, or jewelry, but that's not the only form that drives the market. Silver grain is the raw material, tiny metallic pellets that refineries, manufacturers, and mints use to produce bullion, industrial components, and other silver-based products. And here's the thing, about 80% of the silver grain used in the US comes from Mexico. That wouldn't normally be a problem, but right now there's a major issue brewing. If the US and Mexico don't reach an agreement by March 3rd, silver grain could be hit with a 25% tariff. That would be a widespread disruption. Not only would it raise costs for US refineries and manufacturers, but it could also ripple through the entire silver supply chain, making everything from US manufactured goods that use silver more expensive. This could include electric vehicles, solar panels, and of course bullion products. Bypassing tariffs isn't as simple as just shipping silver through another country. If a producer in Mexico tries to route silver grain through a third country, country of origin rules could block the attempt. And although some companies might be able to find a workaround eventually, it won't be cost-free, and it won't stop an immediate price shock. Even if producers find a way around the tariffs, it'll mean higher logistical costs, more uncertainty, and slower supply chains. And if the US cracks down on transshipments to enforce tariffs, even this lifeline might not last. If the broad 25% tariff on Mexico goes into effect, it could immediately drive up premiums on physical silver, especially in the US market. Refiners and manufacturers would have to adjust their sourcing costs, and those costs would get passed on to dealers and consumers. Investors who want to buy physical silver might suddenly see higher premiums, even if spot prices don't move much. We saw this dynamic play out during COVID when supply chain disruptions led to soaring premiums even while COMEX silver lagged behind. But here's the issue. Not everyone is willing to pay those higher premiums. If premiums rise too much, some investors will pull back, leading to lower physical demand. If fewer people are willing to buy at these elevated prices, dealers and refiners may be forced to adjust by either lowering premiums or selling excess supply at a loss. This could cause a temporary glut in the physical market, pushing down demand for new production, which in turn could weigh on spot prices. If spot prices fall but premiums remain high due to supply chain disruptions, that could frustrate investors. They might see spot silver dropping but still be forced to pay elevated prices for physical metal. And that disconnect could further reduce demand, creating a feedback loop where falling demand keeps dragging the spot price lower until premiums finally settle at a sustainable level. This is a classic supply and demand problem where the market attempts to find equilibrium among sudden price shocks. If gold is showing cracks in the system, silver is standing on even shakier ground. The combination of liquidity stress, VAT exposure, and supply chain risks makes it uniquely positioned for volatility in the weeks ahead. Investors should remain informed on current events and prepare for future disruptions. That's all we have for you today. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.